We are live here. We're just waiting for Instagram to go live. I don't know why it's horizontal, but there you go. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody on YouTube and anyone who's on Instagram. My name is Dr. James Tran. I'm here on representation of GDR, General Dental Residency, for our free webinar series for 2024. And today we have Dr. Cajun Chia talking about resiliency and mental strength in dentistry. Dr. Cajun was born and raised in Darwin, Northern Territory. He moved to Cairns to pursue dentistry at JCU, where he obtained his BDS in 2018. Since then, he has moved back home to Darwin to work full-time for a Bupa dental practice where he enjoys general dentistry, but has special interest in family and pediatric dentistry. In 2020, Cajun hit his lowest point in his life and career, suffering burnout, stress, and anxiety from the challenges of clinical dentistry. That sounds like me as well. On the verge of quitting with poor clinical confidence, low self-esteem, and symptoms of depression, he fortunately stumbled across some key mentors and coaches who guided him through his most transformative personal development journey. Over the course of 5 months, Cajun found clarity in his purpose for dentistry and reignited his passion to serve and impact his patients and community. Now turning his mess into his message, he has a new mission to help recent graduate dentists eliminate burnout through an easy 6-step belief system without quitting the job. Equipping his clients with the mindset tools to become a limitless dentist, Cajun hopes to help them unlock the purpose-driven and fulfilling career they have always dreamt of. Welcome, Cajun.
Thank you, James, for having me.
That's all right. So what we'll do today, to anyone who's tuned in, we're going to have Cajun speak for a half an hour, 45 minutes. You're more than welcome to leave any messages, questions, and we'll go over them along the way, or we can answer them at the end. Cajun, you're more than welcome to have me participate or get my participation as well. Otherwise, we'll bring up the slides here, and we'll leave it with you.
Thank you so much, James. And firstly, wanted to really thank yourself and Alex and the team at General Dental Residency for, inviting me to share on this, I think, really important topic. So today I'm going to be talking about resilience and mental strength in dentistry. Look, obviously, James covered a little bit about who I am, but look, just to kind of add on to what James shared there in my bio, I've been a dentist now for 5 years. And outside of my clinical career, I also work with the ADA Northern Territory branch. I'm the current branch president. And obviously created my motivational coaching business, the Limitless Dentist, in 2020. So some of you may have seen some of my work on Instagram. If not, you're more than welcome to, obviously go and check that out. Now, I guess a really important thing that I wanted to talk about was that, for anyone who was watching either this webinar live or rewatching this, and you're in your dental career and you feel like you might be a bit stressed, you might be a bit anxious, you might be even feeling like you're experiencing some symptoms, signs of burnout, or maybe you've been going through some emotional turbulence, but you don't even know whether you're burnt out or not. Hopefully by the end of this webinar, I can maybe give you a little bit of some guidance and some pointers on how to identify burnout and also how to develop that resilience and mental strength, because we want to have a career that not only we enjoy and feel passionate about, but also, that is tailored to what's important to us. And I think, everyone brings a unique lens to a dental career, and that's so important. So look, as James mentioned, I did experience burnout myself. And when I hit my lowest point, I'll just share with you that I felt really unworthy of being a dentist. I actually even considered quitting my dental career at one point when I was at my lowest point, feeling a bit anxious and depressed. But I was really grateful that through, I guess, a personal development journey, having some important mentors and coaches around me, both in dentistry and outside the dental sector, I was able to refine my purpose in dentistry. And now, I want to be able to help other people. Number one, feel like they're not alone on this journey if you are feeling stressed and anxious. And number two, help give you the tools to really, be able to keep that emotional stability within your dental career. I think dental school is great at teaching us some clinical skills to be safe and effective dentists. and competent dentists, but I think we also need to make sure we learn the skill set of how to become emotionally well, and also, safe dentists in terms of all holistically, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and all those kind of things. So let's talk about what is mental resilience and strength. Well, if you look at the definition, mental resilience refers to a person's ability to adapt to change and uncertainty. People who possess this type of resilience are usually known as being flexible and calm during times of crisis. They use mental strength to solve problems, move forward, and remain hopeful even when they are facing setbacks. So I want to introduce you to this really important thing. If you want to take away anything from this webinar, I want you to understand the stress curve. And basically it says that whenever you're embarking upon a journey or you're doing any kind of activity, at a certain degree of pressure, you're going to start to increase your performance. Obviously, if there's no pressure at all, you might feel really bored. But at a certain level of pressure that's within your, what I call your zone of capability, or with what you can deal with, you actually start to get obviously into a moderate amount of pressure where you enter your comfort zone. And these are things that you're naturally feeling comfortable and confident in without having to think too much. It's almost sometimes called second nature. But beyond that, when you start to increase the pressure, you start to feel stretched. And this is the ideal zone of what we call optimum or peak performance. But what's really interesting is that if you continue to add pressure beyond that peak state or optimal performance, you start to go into the strain scenario and you start to go towards burnout. And so what I'm trying to really share through this curve and the stress curve is that it is important to have a healthy amount of pressure where we want to operate in that ideal zone. But it's really important we understand those boundaries and understand for our own selves what that looks like. Because if we feel like we're feeling strained, we may need to put some things in place to make sure we come back to our optimal performance or that ideal zone. So if you've ever wondered what is burnout, well, if we look at the definition by the World Health Organization, it is in the International Classification of Diseases. But really, burnout is just describing resulting from chronic workplace stress. And that's a really important key thing, right? It's not stress anywhere else, but it's related to the work we do. And it's three main characteristics. Number one, it's feelings of energy depletion and exhaustion, right? So we're feeling tired all the time. We're feeling mentally or physically exhausted. Number two, it's an increased distance from our careers or feeling of negativity or cynicism towards our jobs. And number three, it obviously also then reduces or impacts upon our professional efficacy, which in this case would be clinical performance, right? So you need to have all three to be able to kind of class it as burnout. Now, I want to kind of reference why we're talking about this because, there was a paper that came out by Matt Hopcraft in 2023, which, he surveyed about 1,474 registered dental professionals in Australia, and it found out that 25% of those people were actually experiencing burnout. 11.5% had a current diagnosis of depression, 12.9% with an anxiety disorder. There were people suffering psychological distress, and even 59.4% with minor to severe non-psychotic psychiatric morbidity. Now, this is obviously not to hamper down the energy of the room, but just kind of talking about that, this is why we need to begin to talk more about mental resilience and mental health, because there are so many people who might be suffering in silence who need help. And, younger practitioners, less than 30, were more than twice as likely to have thoughts of suicide in the previous 12 months than older practitioners. And interestingly, male dental practitioners were actually twice as likely as females to have thoughts of suicide in the previous 12 months. But at the end of the day, 1 in 6 Australian dental practitioners reported thoughts of suicide in the past 12 months. Now, again, I truly believe that, it's when these things are being bottled up, they're not being managed, or we don't necessarily feel like we can safely share what's happening heavy on our hearts or in our minds, that these things can happen. But my goal through the Limitless Dentist is if I can change this perspective where, just save one dentist's life from, going down that really, really dark path and being able to, heal and get back to finding purpose and finding passion in their dental career. I think the net effect on the community, you can't even put a price on. So that's why I'm such a passionate advocate for mental health in dentistry. But let's quickly talk about what is not burnout. because burnout's often mistaken for stress. Stress leads to overactive emotions, whereas burnout leads to a more blunted state. Burnout displays similar symptoms to many mood disorders such as anxiety and depression, but remember, it is specific to a work context. And more importantly, it is also not post-traumatic stress disorder, as burnout occurs in response to stresses in the workplace and is characterized by different emotions, whereas PTSD is what happens after a single traumatic event, and then there's something that triggers you again. Now, Alex actually asked me to kind of focus on this part too, which was fixed versus growth mindsets, right? And, these are kind of 4 tips to control your thoughts. And really what it is, this was a post that I actually saw on Instagram, which I really love, because these are kind of 4 questions. Whenever we kind of see dentistry on Facebook or even on Instagram, we might even say, why didn't I start earlier in terms of my journey of maybe doing implants or veneers or clear aligners, whatever it might be. But it's really important to understand that, the past can't be changed. And there's actually no better time to start than now, whether it's learning how to better control and regulate your emotions, whether it's dialing on an amazing CPD like GDR, what they have to offer to really help you transform your practice and transform how you add value to your patients. Another thing that might be going through your mind is, what is the point in making an effort tomorrow? Isn't promised. And, you want to begin to treat every day. Well, this one says treat every day like the last, but more importantly, it's coming from a place of gratitude and really making the most and being really present in your days. You might think this is too hard, I can't do it. It could be an implant, it could be, cosmetic dentistry, whatever it might be. But always remember that if you look at any successful person in the world, especially if you talk to any successful dentist who might be very well known in the community, success comes with a lot of hardship. And if it didn't, everyone would have it. So always remember that, anyone who's super successful has also had the equal, share of failures that they've overcome and learnt from. And it's important to really recognize that. I have to start from the bottom, whilst others were born into, obviously wealth or born into success. Everyone has different journeys and problems, and comparing is not only a waste of time, but remember, it's never apples with apples, because, your journey is unique to you. No one has your perspective on the world, your upbringing necessarily. People may share common things with your upbringing, but not exactly to a T. So always remember that what you bring is your unique lens to dentistry, and always know too that there are only going to be a certain amount of patients who will only be loyal to you in their lives. So you're going to serve some people that will only be able to be served by you and can't be served by any other dentist. And it's really important to understand that too. So what is physical resilience? Well, physical resilience refers to how the body deals with change and recovers from physical demands, illnesses, and injuries. Research suggests that this type of resilience plays an important role in our overall health. And it affects how people age as well as they respond and recover from physical stress and medical issues. And why do I talk about it? Because outside of mental strength, we want to make sure that, our mind is only going to be well as supported by the way that our rest of our body functions physically as well. And so, in terms of building physical resilience, some couple of things, caffeine, for my fellow coffee lovers, is really important. Trying not to exceed 400 milligrams per day is what the evidence currently shows. This is an area where I'm personally happy to say that I'm a work in progress here, but healthy sleep habits. If you're not getting enough rest, I know that when I'm not sleeping properly or not getting the right adequate amount of sleep, it really affects my performance at work and my ability to really focus at work too. Peak energy states, you want to make sure you're exercising on a regular basis. In a balanced diet, you are what you eat. So, making sure, if recently you've been going for more foods of convenience just because, you're running late from your lunch breaks, see how you can meal prep a more balanced diet where you have a healthy amount of protein, carbs, as well as some fats to make sure you're giving your body everything it needs to perform optimally. But I also want to teach you a really important technique that if you're going to take away anything today outside of the stress curve, this is an absolute game changer for what I call a tactical tool when you're stressed. So, for instance, let's say you're trying to seat a matrix band and the matrix band is not going through that contact, or you're finding it's deforming when you put the ring and you can't control the bleeding. You're trying to do a class 2 restoration. You don't have enough time to get the rubber dam set out. right? So what do you do when you're stressed? Or maybe you're trying to take a tooth out, you've broken the crown and you haven't prepared for a surgical, and you're trying to figure out, oh my God, how am I going to get this tooth out? In these moments, you can do what we call a physiological sigh, right? And what you do with a physiological sigh, it's very simple. There's 3 steps. Number 1, you do a regular inhale through the nose, which is the regular breath. And then just before exhaling, you do a short to sharp inhalation through the nose again. So, and then after that, you're going to do a long, slow exhale through the mouth. So it goes something like this. You go. That's a physiological sigh. And the research actually shows that when you do 3 repetitions of this, it can immediately down-regulate your arousal state of your nervous system back down to a baseline. And why is this effective? Because, sometimes let's say, I've used it just today, the other, literally today I had a case where, I was really, really struggling to move this tooth. It was a really, tooth that just didn't want to budge with my luxator. So I actually took a step back and I just went, and I did it 3 times. And what happened was, because I was able to get back to baseline, I said, when I go back into this operating field, I will get this tooth out. I set the intention. That's really important too. And obviously, I successfully got the tooth out. So, the physiological sigh is not to be underestimated. There are many studies that show, and it's a great way where you don't have to necessarily deglove. Sometimes if I'm really kind of not sure what to do, or I need to take a break from the room, I'll also deglove and leave the room as well to do a physiological sigh, But just this alone, while you're still gloved and masked, is a great tactical tool in your tool belt to bring back your emotional stress to kind of a base level from your nervous system and be able to still clinically perform at your best. So what about emotional resilience? Well, emotional resilience involves being able to regulate emotions during times of stress. See, resilient people are aware of their emotional reactions and tend to be in touch with their inner life. And because of this, they are also able to calm their mind and manage their emotions when they're dealing with negative experiences. This type of resilience also helps people maintain a sense of optimism when times are tough, because when they are emotionally resilient, they actually understand that adversity and difficult emotions won't last forever. So let's talk about this, because, I created this kind of framework of understanding, how we define our identity. Everything you say after I am literally defines who you are. And let me give you an example, because when earlier in my career, anyone asked, what do you do? I used to, who here always used to, or still answers, I am a dentist. Now, nothing wrong with saying I am a dentist. You should be absolutely proud of being a dentist. But these days, when people ask me the question, what do you do professionally on your line of work? I actually say that I do dentistry. And you might wonder, what's the difference, Cage? Well, when you say I do dentistry, what you're saying is it's an activity, or it's one part of who you are. But obviously, the dentist part of you is not wholly 100% of who you are and all the value you have to offer to the world. So many times we forget that outside of being the doctor, such and such who we are, we may also be a significant other to someone else. We could be a spouse. We could be a sibling, a brother or a sister. We could be a grandchild. We could be a parent, or we could be a guardian. We could be a best friend to some other people. So it's really important to understand that who you are in terms of as a dentist is only one part of who you are, and you are a multifaceted person. And why is this important? Because I believe that your identity are made up of those pillars of core values of what's important to you. And I wanted to link it to something that we know in dentistry, which is obviously demineralization and remineralization curves, sorry. And we understand that obviously, your identity, or the pillars of what are important to you, what is actually taking away from those pillars or eroding at your identity on a daily basis are things like life stress, tough patients. How do we overcome, or how do we deal with the clinical mistakes we make? Is it going to end your career, or are you going to take it as a growth mindset or a growth point to say, how can I do this better next time when I serve another patient with a similar scenario? The way we actually add or bolster those pillars or remineralize those pillars is to set that intentional action and making sure we're actually spending time to cultivate those pillars. So, dentistry might be one pillar, but I can guarantee you that it is only one pillar of my identity. It's not the only pillar. Because as we know, if the Parthenon was only supported by one middle, pillar, and then obviously something happens to your dental career, it's no wonder why we no longer feel worthy of being a dentist. But, for me, some of my other core pillars are family. I really make sure that throughout my week I spend quality time with my parents and my family. You know, financial well-being, making sure my finances are in good order, is also another pillar. Physical fitness and health, being fit is also one of my pillars as well. So I make sure I do exercise on a regular basis, or when I can, to make sure that I'm being supported by those other pillars. And that way, when dentistry isn't going so well, your identity doesn't crumble because you're able to lean on those other strong pillars. But you need to make sure that outside of dentistry, you're also setting intentional actions for those other important core values, so that you remain strong in who you are. And if you're wondering what core values are, there are some QR codes here which you're welcome to use your phone to take a scan of. The one on the left there is the VIA character strength test. That tells you your top strengths of what is what you're really good at. And I think that's really important to understand. On the right, the QR code will take you to a list of 106 core values. And look, if you've never done core value work before, I highly encourage you to do it. And always remember that it's not a static thing. It is a dynamic thing that, as you go through different phases in your life, you'll discover new core values that are important to you. But for me, for example, I'd like to try to categorize them in really main themes. So number one is like dentistry, health, and obviously, family. I guess with health, I talk about fitness as well, and obviously financial well-being as well, to make sure that those pillars, all of the decisions I make in my life, are always in response to how are these strengthening those four main pillars. So I hope that really helps you. And if you have done some core value work before, I encourage you to revisit it as well and say, what are my core values and what's important to me, and what kind of contributions do I want to make, and how does dentistry fit in to my core values as well of what's important to me. So in order to understand emotional resilience as well, it's really important to understand that, emotions come with a spectrum. So there are low intensity feelings, there are medium intensity feelings, and high intensity feelings. The more accurately we can describe how we feel, the more control we can actually take over how we feel. And what do I mean by that? Let's say something's not going quite right with a case or something like that. It's really easy just to say that I'm angry. But how angry are you? Are you just slightly irritated that you had to get another sectional matrix because you accidentally crumpled it? Or are you furious because you really, like, the tooth is not cooperating with you and you can't get that root piece out, or that last root fragment out? In terms of afraid, are you just a little bit nervous about trying to do a procedure for the first time? Or are you absolutely terrified? When we can understand the severity and the nature of our emotions and be able to label it and call it out accurately for what it is, it allows us to take that active control to say, okay, now that I know how I feel, what am I going to do about it? What tools do I have available? Whether it's talking to a friend, talking to a mentor, seeking help, to make sure we can get back to a baseline where we feel calm, centered, and confident as well. Now, I want to introduce you to another concept that I learned from an amazing book called Extreme Ownership, which basically, and it reflects back onto this quote, which is, when you react, you allow others to control you. But when you choose to respond, you are in control. Life is 10% of actually what happens to you, and it's 90% on how you respond to it. And so basically, any event that happens into your life, whether it's in your dental career or even in your life, the outcome that actually eventuates from the event that occurred usually is from two things. Either it's an automatic reaction where it's a more of a defensive thing, where we, let's say, the matrix band. I'm going to use matrix band because obviously, restorative challenges are part of my common day-to-day challenges. But, let's say a matrix band doesn't want to see it, or you're really struggling to get that contact that you want to get, right? A reaction would be to just go, oh, this thing's not working for me, right? And that's a reaction because you're essentially, you're reacting on the spur of whatever's happening. How you respond better might be, you might say, okay, this, how can I take a break? I'm going to do a physiological sigh, and I'm going to look at my matrix band again, like all of the systems I have available, relook at the prep. Is there, anything I can maybe do a hybrid version with a TOEFL mic or anything like that? And you respond with deliberate decision and intention to then obviously sway the outcome towards your favor. So always remember that this applies not just in dentistry, but anything in your life. Every outcome that happens as a result of an event, you remember that 10% of it is what's happening to you, but you get to control the 90% on how you choose to intentionally respond to those situations. Now, the final thing I just wanted to cover too is obviously this concept called the 6 human needs. Now, you may have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if you haven't, this is what this triangle shows here on the top right there. And, Maslow talks about how the goal is to get to the top, which is self-actualization. Nothing wrong with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but I like to talk instead about the 6 human needs. And I believe that everything in life or in your career, when something's not going quite right, it's usually because one of these 6 human needs are not being met or are lacking and are lacking in maybe not substance is the right word, but maybe you're not in setting enough intentional action or responding to an unmet need. So number 1 is a sense of certainty. It's really important that we kind of have some assurances. We know when our first patient's going to show up. We know how many days a week we're working. We know the location of the dental practice that we're working at, right? But at the same time, it's also important that we also have a level of variety as well. Because, that kind of, when there's a sense of uncertainty or variety in our life, it means that we're being able to be responsive to new challenges and grow ourselves as well. Because if we just do the same thing every single day and everything is always certain, eventually it can sometimes become monotonous and we begin to stagnate in our growth journey. You may have an unmet need in terms of significance. Do you feel what you do as a dentist is significant as a contribution to what you want to contribute to or to your community or to your practice? It could be a sense of connection or love, especially in dentistry. We are very siloed where we just, it's our dental chair, our patients, and our dental assistant, whereas in a hospital setting for medical doctors, they're always working in a team. So, sometimes we're striving for that, connection or love or making sure we have that kind of closeness. It doesn't have to be romantic love. It can also just be that sense of deep connection with people who you really vibe with, but also close friends, family, you name it. And obviously, coming back to that as well is, making sure there's a sense of growth. Are you growing? When was the last time, you engaged in a CPD course? When was the last time you grew, in terms of personal development? I'm a huge advocate of personal development because I truly believe that when you focus on being the best version of you, it allows you to be the best dentist you can be and serve your patients to your highest level. And also your sense of contribution. Do you feel like what you're doing is contributing in the way you want to contribute to the community? So, if you are feeling maybe a bit stressed, anxious, depressed, maybe even burnt out, go back to these 6 human needs and ask yourself, where out of these 6 human needs do I maybe have some unmet needs? Like when was the last time I connected with someone significant? If you haven't called your mom or dad in a long time, it's really easy. We're in a text society or Instagram message society, but when was the last time you picked up the phone and called your mom or dad or someone whom you love and say, hey, just was thinking of you and wanted to catch up? A phone call goes a long way. It could be a sense of, contribution or significance. I know a lot of my friends, other dentists who volunteer their time in other things. That's why I volunteer my time with ADA, because it allows me to grow my sense of significance and contribution outside of my patients and my practice. Right. So, yeah, it's a really great framework for you to understand where you are at right now, but more importantly, where you could be in the future. And I guess I also want to talk about a really important point, which is the reason why I believe dentists have a high rate of burnout or have a higher rate of these kinds of, issues, is because, unfortunately, the kind of people who become dentists, we are naturally textbook perfectionists. Now, who here, I can definitely put my hand up and say, once upon a time on my CV, I used to be really proud and wear perfectionism like a badge of honor to say, oh my God, on my CV, I'd say, I work hard until I do things perfectly. But actually, if you really think about it, the perfectionistic mindset is actually kind of what they call self-destructive. And the reason why is because perfectionism means that you're always looking for the flaw in something. And let me give you an example. Let's say you take a beautiful photo of a piece of an anterior composite that you did. And you're really proud of it. You've got your DSLR camera, you set it and you're like, yes. And let's say you post it on your Instagram page or you might share it with your group chat. And you're really proud of it. Literally a day later, you go on Instagram and you see Tony Rotondo post one of his cases. And you look at the beautiful textural anatomy he has and the artistic flair he has, and you go look back at your case that you're once really proud of, and you go, oh, I don't like this, and this is no good, and oh, it's not as good as this, so therefore it's no longer good. That's the in us that really kind of destroys or discredits the amazing wins we're having. So instead of choosing perfection, I encourage you to choose progress over progress over perfection. What do I mean by that? You want to have one goal only every single day, and that is to be 1% better today than you were yesterday, or even 1% better tomorrow than you are today. And if we look at this from a science perspective or a numbers perspective, I want you to look at that graph on the right. Because if you choose to be 1% less every day, within 1 year, 365 days, you've only grown 0.003. But when you choose to be 1% better each and every single day, now, what does that 1% better mean? It could be a better conversation with your patient. It could be a better way you talk to yourself. When was the last time you looked at your inner self-talk? Sometimes the way we actually, if you could record the way or write down what you say to yourself and actually look at it, you would never say it to anyone else, right? Maybe 1% better in your interaction with your nurse. When was the last time you thanked your nurse for the amazing things that they help you do so that you can serve your patients to your highest level? When was the last time you had an amazing conversation with your receptionist, your practice manager, right? It's all of these things. And, when you choose to be 1% better, within 1 year of just being 1% better, you are 37 times the person you were when you started, right? That's the power of compounding, and that's the power of just choosing to be 1% better each day. But whenever you embark upon a new journey, it's really important that, you may be in any part of your career or the phase of your career where you're trying new procedures, or you're learning, you're studying, you're doing these courses like GDR, and you're like, I'm putting all this effort in, but I'm not seeing the results yet. Always recognize that when you're learning a new skill or you're doing something for the very first time, you're going to hit this part called the plateau of latent potential. And so essentially there's this thing called the valley of disappointment, which is basically, you're not confident or competent in this particular procedure or the skill set, but you're just learning. You might be making some early clinical mistakes. But when you persevere and push through, what happens is you reach a point beyond the plateau of latent potential where you start to experience exponential growth. So the reason why I say that is because it's really important to be really patient with yourself and graceful with yourself, to not just be able to master something quickly, because, most of the people who are the masters of our craft in terms of dentistry have spent hours upon hours. Many of you may have heard of the 10,000 hour rule to master anything. Unless you spend 10,000 hours on that particular procedure, you can't say that you've mastered it. So, you need to get past that plateau of latent potential. And if you just strive to be 1% better each day and never quit and continue to persevere, you will eventually see the success and results that you're looking to see. And more importantly, I try to be an inspiration to show people that, you want to aim towards designing and planning the dental career of your dreams. There is really no cookie cutter approach to dentistry, and always recognize that clinical dentistry is, again, only one facet of the contribution you can make as dentists. I know some amazing people who go into dental research, people who, advocate and do leadership board positions like what I do at ADA Northern Territory, or with the ADA. Some people go to eventually go and study law with their dentistry degree and go into medico-legal or dental-legal space. Some people become company reps or work on the industry side to kind of bridge that communication and the expertise on how to develop materials better. Outside of clinicians, we also have, specialists. We have educators, our important teachers who are teaching the next generations of dentists. So there's we even have business owners and entrepreneurs who start off as dentists, but then now they're, moving and shaking the world in the world of business. So the point I'm trying to make is there is no cookie cutter approach to your dental career. And always remember that if you happen to be the type of person where you don't see clinical dentistry as the only thing you do, I encourage you, again, go back to your core values and re-explore, how can I use dentistry as a stepping stone to doing something even more amazing. But at the end of the day, I truly believe your success in your dental career is all about what you believe, and it's about your belief systems. Your limiting beliefs, really hold us back. And so, I want to talk about a 6-step framework that I actually do. And, I know this is only a free webinar that I can only kind of, give you as much as I can in this short time. But, I do have a full day course that is basically, 6 hours long. And essentially, if you'd like access to that, or you'd like that to be part of GDR, just message James and Alex and let them know you'd like it to be part of the program. And who knows, something might happen. But the point I'm trying to make is, your belief is really the crux of what determines your future. And in that 6-step framework, I start with, your beginning point of understanding where you're at. We look at your energy. What are the things holding you back, like your limiting beliefs? We do some more identity work. Going through some of the emotions and the emotional stability tools that you can have, and obviously talking about the future and what does fulfillment look like in your dental career. But if you're wondering, how I learned what I do, I want to tell you that, none of this stuff is kind of innately just understood, and it's just something I discovered. If we accept that we had to do 5 years or 4 years to get our DDS or our BDS, we need to also accept that we need to be students of personal development and students of emotional mastery as well. And so these are a couple of amazing books that I've read that have completely changed my life and career. Burnout's a great book. Setting Boundaries, Extreme Ownership, Atomic Habits. That is I call it a go-to book, because again, the plateau of latent potential and the 1% better curve comes from there. Limitless by Jim Quick was one of my first books I read, and that actually inspired me to call my company the Limitless Dentist. And there's also a new evidence-based textbook that has actually got released by a colleague of mine in the UK who's also a dentist and speaks on mental health, Dr. Muruk. And she actually has a textbook called Resilience and Mental Wellbeing for Dental Professionals. So definitely go and check that out. It's an evidence-based textbook that takes you through. It's an actual activity-based textbook where you actually get to do activities and learn positive psychology and how you can improve your mental mindset space, your resilience, and your mental strength to be the best dentist you want to be. But look, ultimately, at the end of the day, I want you to kind of give you one more quote as food for thought to consider this, which is, why be the manager of your circumstances when you can be the creator of your own destiny? And if you ever want to, let's say you're struggling right now, I'm really grateful with the community I've created on Instagram that, many people have reached out to me to share what's on their hearts, and I've created a safe, confidential space where people can share. And, if you are struggling right now, or you need someone to talk to and you're not sure who you can talk to, please feel free to reach out to me. You can DM me directly on Facebook. I've got my QR code there. Feel free to find me on Instagram and message me on Instagram at the Limitless Dentist. I'm always available for anyone in our industry. And at the end of the day, I just want to help you feel seen, heard, and understood so you can get back on track, you can heal, and create that fulfilling dental career of your dreams. But I really thank the GDR team again for giving me an opportunity to share with you on resilience and mental strength. And I'll pass it back to our amazing host, Dr. James.
Wow, Dr. Cajun, that was a very informative and very insightful webinar. Even though you had just under an hour, you've covered a lot of dot points, and I'm sure there's a lot more to dig into. And again, if you are watching and you want to learn more, please reach out to Dr. Cajun or check out his other links. If you have any questions, feel free to post them. In the meantime, if you are interested in any future GDR events, we have a Sydney DSD study club. Please check out the General Dentistry website. I'll post a link in a moment here so that you can come along. It's a half-day event, and we've got 2 amazing speakers. We've got Dr. Alistair Graham, and I think we have Dr. Ben Lee. Don't quote me on that one. I just can't remember on top of my head. So we'll have it to a specialist and a general dentist talking about the aspects of digital smile design. The Brisbane one has with closed registrations, but there is still time to attend the Sydney one. We also have the August intake for the general dental residency open up. We do have an early bird offer as well. Going back, also we have an early bird offer for the study club, which is 140 plus GST, regular price 250. We do have early bird pricing as well for the general dental residency in Melbourne, starting in August. So please have a look at that as well. Okay, just looking for any questions. I don't think we have any here, which is fine. I have a question. How do you handle challenging patients or a difficult situation?
Yeah, great
I'm sure
question.
you went briefly over this during this talk, but just curious how you would handle a patient's unhappy with potentially any work that's been done.
So you're talking, can I ask more accurately, this is something work you've completed and now unsatisfied with the treatment?
Yeah, they're unsatisfied, but how do you handle it without taking it personally and affecting you? Because a lot of people, I feel, they do come up to me and they do, they just want to be the best and at what they do, and they feel like they're a bit of a failure. So just wondering what your strategy would be.
Yep, absolutely. I think number one, what's helped me in my career, and by the way, if you are the type of person where you are, judging yourself harshly, I want to kind of make you feel seen, heard, and understood that is perfectly normal too. I've been there before. But at the end of the day, I always try to think, I try to take the ego out of the situation and go, I don't think about what's best for me. I always focus on what's best for my patients. And so if my patients are unsatisfied with a treatment, I actually encourage to have a crucial conversation with them where I actually ask them, what about it were they unsatisfied with? And I come back to the expectations of treatment when we discussed it before we even started the treatment. And I try to figure out what is it that they're unsatisfied with and can I resolve it? Now, if you can resolve it where it could be like a sensitive filling, for instance, is a really common one amongst dentists where you put a filling in and now the bites might be too high, it's just sensitive. Never be afraid to redo a filling if you need to, right? Because, sometimes, and I'll say to my patients, I say, look, most of the fillings I do don't have these kind of situations, but obviously this has occurred and I want to try to fix the issue. There may have been something that maybe my bonding didn't work properly, or I try not to use too much jargon. I'll say my filling didn't quite glue properly in. And if it's okay with you, I'm more than happy to replace it without charge. And the reason why I do it is because at the end of the day, I want to learn from my mistake and discover, okay, what is it about it that went wrong and how can I rectify this issue? But look, if you are in a situation where you feel that you can't rectify the issue because you don't either have the skill set to do so, be willing to say, look, it looks like this problem is a bit too complex for me to solve for you, but that doesn't mean I'm going to leave you stranded in this situation. I'm going to do everything in my power to connect you to someone who can resolve this issue, whether it's within my practice, if you have other, senior dentists working for you or with you, or even referring them to one of our fantastic specialist colleagues and bridging that communication and even saying, I'm going to make sure, you're well taken care of and this problem is taken care of as well. So I think from two aspects. One, when you do that to go the extra mile for your patients, you feel proud of yourself that even though you had a mistake, you're willing to overcome the issue and not let it, dampen your self-worth or the value you add in as a dentist. But the second thing too is, the reason why patients sue dentists, the number one thing I find is it's because they don't have that trust, or they never felt like they were seen, heard, and understood. So I tend to find that when you always focus on serving your patients and making sure that they really feel understood and you're really listening to them, even if you do something that, they have something sensitive or it doesn't quite go the way you expected, you can still come back from it and still build trust in that relationship, and they'll still come back and see you for many years to come. I hope that answers your question there, James.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much. I have one more question. Let's just say I'm just reflecting on my past experience many years ago when I first experienced a lot of anxiety after breaking a root tip during extraction. I think your example as well. And that whole evening, I was very, just I felt my chest was crushing. I just felt like a complete failure as a dentist, as a clinician. And I did not know how long this feeling would last because I still felt it the next day. What would you say to someone who's also might be going through that?
Yep.
The patient's unhappy. Maybe it's what could you say to them? How long will it take until they feel better?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think number one, That's a great example because I've definitely gone through it myself. Actually, one time I pushed a root into the sinus and I had to then send it to my MaxVac specialist who actually took the root out and they took care of it, but I felt terrible. I think it's really important to put things into perspective. Number one, we're really lucky that in the world of dentistry, there is only 2 scenarios where life or death ever occurs in dentistry. One of them is an surgical air embolism. And number 2 is if you happen to sever a important artery where you can't actually get hemostasis and the patient's severely bleeding. Everything else we do in dentistry, even if it's a broken root tip or something like that, the patient is not going to die from a broken root tip. They will recover. And yes, they're going to be in a bit of discomfort and it's not the ideal situation. But because we're not dealing with life or death, you have time to reach out to your colleagues that you need to and get the solution rectified. So number one, it's perfectly normal to feel terrible, but recognize that these feelings happen. And what's more important is, I think part of it, to really answer your question, James, both the first and the second question, you need to change your relationship with failure. See, I used to think failure was the opposite of success, but I actually understood that failure is the precursor to success. You want to learn how to fail fast and fail forward, where it's about not being afraid of making mistakes as long as we're obviously operating within our safe standards of our competency bands. But more importantly, understanding that when things go wrong, use it as a learning point to really understand, okay, what went wrong? How can I do this better? And also, don't keep it within yourself. Make sure you have a tribe of people around you. It could be a peer group, it could be a mentor that you can talk to and really get things off your chest and seek perspective. Because I'm more than happy for anyone to reach out to me. I'm not the most clinically adept dentist where I'll be able to solve your issues, but just emotionally support you to say, hey, look, I've been there too. You're all good. Like, we've all been there. You're not alone in this. You'll get through this. And more importantly, if your patient is not in a life or death situation, you still have time to repair both the relationship and make sure the patient gets an amazing outcome.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I would agree. There's always that. I think it's really important to have a group of people that you can bounce ideas off and let your stresses off about, and also maybe an external group who's not so close to you that you can also bounce ideas off that you might not be comfortable sharing with your personal group. So very good answer. I really like that one. I think we'll end it there. Are there any final remarks, comments you'd like to add, Dr. Cajun?
I guess if anyone thinks of questions, but they weren't, I didn't want to post it publicly or something like that, please send it to me and send it on a DM. Reach out to me at the Limitless Dentist or even personally. I'm always available to listen to your questions, answer your questions. And yeah, it's really important that no one, my goal is to make sure our fellow colleagues stop suffering in silence. Everything you're going through, so many of us have walked through that journey before. So we want you to take that burden off your shoulders that you're not alone. And there is help available. You just need to reach out and ask.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody who tuned in. And this recording will be available for anyone who's missed out. Again, thank you and good night to everybody.
Thanks.